Okay, I want to talk about the Pacers. The Pacers went 1-3 this past week. Massively disappointing, right? Massively disappointing showing. This is just awful at this point. 1-3. I said last week, previewing this week for the Pacers, they played 4 games, which is very difficult. 3 of them on the road, 1 of them at home just recently against the Hornets. I said that they needed to go 3-1 for me to feel safe and 4-0 for me to feel reassured. If I was going to feel good about the Pacers moving forward, I needed them to go 3-1 against this stretch. And part of the reason why I said that is because all of these teams are outside of the playoff, outside the top 6, and most of them at the time that we played them were outside the top 10 of the Eastern Conference, right? These are bottom feeder teams. These are teams that have no championship hopes, very little playoff hopes. Maybe at least one of them for sure will squeak into the play-in tournament, maybe win a game, but may or may not qualify for the actual playoffs. And that was what we were looking at when we looked at each of these teams, and the Pacers went 1-3 against them all. How in the world did this happen? There are countless issues with the Pacers right now. The first one that comes to mind is hustle, intensity, and effort. They were out-rebound 45-29 by the Hornets. This is a Pacers team that is almost fully healthy at this point. The Hornets also shot 51% from the field, and you could say, well, they got lucky shooting the ball. Their shots just fell more. They won a game by 4. What can you do? Indiana, across the board the last few weeks, has been giving the Hornets, just giving opposing teams in general, way too much space around the perimeter, way too much space anywhere outside the lane. Indiana, the way they play defense involves them sort of shrinking back towards the boxes and the elbows, the blocks and the elbows there. Still, they're giving up way too much space around the perimeter, way too much space across the backcourt of the floor. That's part of why Indiana has been defensively lackluster, and I feel like they're lacking hustle, intensity, and effort. I feel like they're lacking that tenacity that this team had last year as they go to the Eastern Conference Finals. They don't have it this year, and that's a big reason why they're 10-15. They also don't have a consistently dominant star, right? The top 3 scorers from this last game against the Hornets came off the bench. TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, forgive me, I forget the last one, but their top scorers were coming off the bench, which is totally great. You have a great bench, but that only makes sense and that only is worth it if you have a great starting 5 as well. And most of them did not hit double digits against the Hornets, and that's a problem. And we need to have somebody scoring 20-plus consistently game after game after game. 30-plus would be great game after game after game. And that's the presence that we felt last year with Tyrese Halliburton. And that presence just isn't there right now. It just isn't there this year. We needed a TJ McConnell legacy game to even crack 100. We lost 109-103, if I'm not mistaken. 109-105, something along those lines. TJ McConnell had 30 in this game. That's not his role. He should not be the Tyrese Halliburton. He's a phenomenal role player. He's a phenomenal hustle guy to come off the bench. I love TJ McConnell. He's my favorite player. He should not be the one expected to drop 30 on a given night to keep us in a game that we're still going to lose. If that is the situation we're in as a Pacers team, there are major problems involved, and that is not a secret at all when speaking on the major problems present with the Indiana Pacers. This team's collapsing late as well. They've been in close ones, right? They've been running out of gas in those close games. They were tied late in the 4th against the Nets on the road. They, of course, only lost by 4. It was Brandon Miller free throws that ended it against the Hornets a couple of nights ago at home. These are bad teams, right? The Nets are bad. The Hornets are bad. Of course, it's the NBA. No team is bad, but comparative to the rest of the league, the Nets and the Hornets are bad. And they're definitely not going to be in the top 6. They're probably not going to make the play-in tournament. And even if they do, they're probably not going to do much damage in it or the ensuing playoff bracket afterwards. If this is the fourth quarter presence the Pacers have, I'm just wondering where the fourth quarter Pacers is that I remember. Where's the fourth quarter Pacers that's able to put some streaky runs together to lift themselves over the Knicks or the Bucks? Winning a 7-game series against teams like that just sounds crazy at this point with the product that we're seeing on the court from the Indiana Pacers. I don't know exactly what the problems are. I just know there's problems. And a few things that jump out to me as signs of those problems are that lack of hustle, that lack of intensity, that lack of effort. No consistently dominant star that like we wanted Tyrese Halliburton to be. He went off against the Bulls. He's going to go dark for another 2 weeks if history holds true. And this team just collapsing late, not quite having it in him to win a close game in the regular season. It is a regular season game and an 82-game regular season, but at 10-15 and slipping in the standings, this is just completely unacceptable. And the Pacers have very little to be proud of at this point in the season. They do have some things to be proud of, though, and I want to talk about the positive side of the Pacers so far. They beat the Bulls, right? The Pacers have lost 5 of their last 6. What's that one game that they won? It was the Chicago Bulls on the road. That happened in large part because Tyrese Halliburton popped, right? He went for 23 points, 8 assists. He had 5 3-pointers in the game. The team across the board shot incredibly well from 3, and that's not necessarily replicable. But what did we say we needed to see, right? A legitimate NBA star show up and win the team games in big moments. And Tyrese popped in this game and did enough to lift the Pacers over the Bulls. If Tyrese doesn't have that type of performance, this is probably another loss. We're talking about an 0-4 Pacers team over the last week. Tyrese popped, 23 points, 8 assists. Now do it again, right? Because he didn't show up that way against the Hornets. When are we going to see that again? And when are we going to start to see that more and more consistently until the Pacers are winning consistently and cementing themselves as a legitimate playoff contender and potentially a championship contender, right? Again, I said we needed a 3-1 finish this week for me to feel safe, and I also thought that 4-0 was possible. We went 1-3, right? All of those losses are to teams currently out of playoff range. This week, you go to Philly. That's another team out of playoff range. The Philadelphia win would be slightly more impressive because it's on the road and because the entirety of that big 3 is now back and playing together. They beat the Bulls just a few nights ago with Jared McCain, with Tyrese Maxey, and with Joel Embiid. That Sixers big 3 is one that should be, with how Jared McCain has been playing, that Sixers big 3 is one that should be making them play at a top 3 in the East level, right? Top 4. They should be hosting Game 7s in the playoffs. That is what I'll say. With this roster, with this big 3 that the Philadelphia 76ers have, they should be hosting Game 7s in the playoffs. They're not, and they probably won't because they had such a bad start, primarily due to injuries to Embiid and whoever else on that team. Jared McCain has been carrying. He hasn't been carrying them to much. This is a very, from a record standpoint, a bad team, right? A team that likely is not going to the playoffs, and if they do, they're going to have to work their way through the play-in tournament. But this big 3 could have them playing like a team that's hosting Game 7s in the playoffs, right? This roster could have them playing like a team that is elite in the East, right? Not yet. It's their second game back together, but they won last time, and they absolutely can win again against the Pacers. If the Pacers can get that win on the road, I would be legitimately impressed, especially if they win it the right way. They host the Pelicans on Sunday at 5 p.m. as well. I believe that was a game that was added to the schedule after the NBA Cup, but the Pelicans, that's a big one, right? Again, revenge game at home. Pull out that win, go 2-0 this weekend, and take some weight off the shoulders of the entire community. That's what we want to see from the Pacers. I'm interested to see if that can happen. So the Pacers across the board, right? They're bad. They're struggling. We talk about the issues that they have, but this weekend, I think, could prove to be a break for them. If they can go to Philadelphia and win over the 76ers, and if they can host the New Orleans Pelicans, and win that game as well, split them and I feel fine, win both and I feel great. And that's what I want to see from the Pacers as we move forward into this weekend.